There's something about a forgotten machine that speaks louder than words, not the polished ones sitting behind velvet ropes at a show, not the trailered, pampered, never-driven kind. The ones left behind. The ones that sat in a field or a barn or someone's backlot for so long that the grass grew up around the tires and the world just moved on without them. This is one of those trucks, a 1948 Dodge delivery truck, purchased from an online auction sight unseen. No history, no paperwork trail worth following, no phone call from a previous owner explaining what happened, or why it stopped running, or how it ended up sitting in a yard for what turned out to be more than 6 decades. We bought it on faith. The kind of faith that comes from looking at a photograph of something old and solid and thinking that it's worth the gamble. And here it is. The first thing you notice when you walk up to a truck like this isn't the rust, and it isn't the flat tires, and it isn't the crust, and it isn't the cracked glass or the missing trim. The first thing you notice is the presence of it. There's a weight to old iron that modern vehicles simply don't have. Not just physical weight, though there's plenty of that, but a kind of gravity. A sense that this machine was built by people who expected it to last, and it did. It outlasted them. It outlasted whoever drove it last. It outlasted whatever business put it on the road in 1948 and whatever errand it was running when it made that final trip back to the yard in 1959. The last registered year on record, 1959. 60+ years of silence. We start the way you always start with a vehicle this far gone. Not with wrenches, but with eyes. You walk around it. You open things. You look inside spaces that haven't seen daylight in a generation. And you take inventory of what you have before you decide what you're going to do about it. The cab interior is rough. The way everything is rough on a truck this age. The bench seat is cracked. The headliner, what remains of it, has collapsed in places. The floor has rust bubbling through in the corners. But nothing is catastrophically wrong in there. No major components are missing. The gauges are present. The steering wheel, that enormous thin-rimmed Bakelite wheel that was standard on every truck of this era, is still in place. The shifter is there. The foot pedal for the starter is there, which is one of those details that stops modern mechanics cold the first time they encounter it. A foot pedal to start the engine, right there on the cab floor like a third pedal that nobody warned you about. These trucks were built in a different world. We find fire ants living in a section of the lower body. That gets dealt with. We find dirt daubers, those slender black wasps that build their mud tube nests in any enclosed, protected space they can find. They have found the carburetor. Not just the outside of it. The inside. There is a solid mud nest packed into the carburetor throat, filling it completely, which tells you everything you need to know about how long this truck has been sitting and how thoroughly the natural world has been trying to reclaim it. Under the hood, we find the engine. The original engine. A 230 cubic inch flathead 6-cylinder. Chrysler's workhorse power plant of the era. An engine that was in production for decades because it was simple and it was tough and it didn't ask a lot from the people who ran it. Whether we'll ask something of us today is the central question. We don't know yet. We won't know until we try and hit the first step with any engine that has been dormant this long, is to find out whether it will turn at all. This sounds simple. It is not simple. An engine that is sat for 60 years without being run, without fresh oil circulating through its galleries and across its bearing surfaces, without the pistons moving in the bores. That engine has had 6 decades for its rings to rust against the cylinder walls, for its bearings to dry out, for whatever oil remained in the pan to oxidize into something closer to varnish than lubricant. Engines in this condition seize, they lock up solid. And when you try to force a seized engine to rotate, you don't free it, you break things. So we don't force it. Not yet. We start by removing the spark plugs, all 6 of them. This is standard practice on the long dormant engine for 2 reasons. First, it tells you something about what's happening inside those cylinders. A plug that comes out wet with oil tells a different story than one that comes out dry and carbon-filled. Second, and more importantly, removing the plugs eliminates compression resistance, which means if the engine will turn at all, it can turn more freely. These plugs are old. They are dirty in the way that only 60 years of sitting to make a spark plug dirty. Not from combustion deposits, but from time itself. We work each one carefully, back and forth, a quarter turn at a time. On a cast iron head this old, a plug that breaks off in the bore is a serious problem. A helicoil repair on a Flathead 6 that you're not even sure will run is not a conversation anyone wants to have. Shh. All 6 come out clean. That is the first good sign of the day. Next, we introduce fluid into the cylinders. Transmission fluid and penetrating oil down through each plug hole, targeting the top of each piston and the cylinder wall immediately surrounding it. Then we wait. We let that fluid work its way down past the rings, between the ring and the bore, breaking the rust bond that time has created. This is patience work. This is the part of a restoration that never makes it into the highlight reel because it involves standing around and waiting for chemistry to do its job. While we wait, we move to the flywheel. We pull the cover from the bottom of the bell housing to expose the flywheel teeth, and we attempt carefully, with a breaker bar on the appropriate point, to rotate the engine by hand. It moves, not easily, not smoothly, but it moves. The crankshaft rotates. The pistons travel in their bores. Nothing is seized. In 60 years of sitting with whatever oil was left in this engine and whatever protection those cylinder walls had, nothing locked up. That is not a given. That is not something you can count on with a vehicle this old. That is luck and good engineering, and probably a little bit of both. We reinstall the spark plugs and begin assessing the ignition system. On a truck this age, with all the original wiring gone, every bit of it stripped out or rotted away with nothing usable remaining, we are not going to trace circuits through a harness. We are going to bypass the system entirely and run a direct wire from the battery to the coil. It is crude, it is temporary, but it will tell us whether we have ignition at all, and right now, that is the only question that matters. The battery situation on these old trucks is something worth explaining because it catches people off guard. The batteries are not under the hood, they are in the cab beneath the floor. There's an access panel and below it a battery tray, and in this case the original 6-volt battery is still sitting there. We are not going to use it. We are going to substitute a modern 12-volt unit, but we are going to wire it to maintain the original positive ground configuration, which is how these trucks left the factory and how the entire electrical system was designed to operate. Shh, we get a spark. It is weak, it is inconsistent, but it is there. And on a truck this age, weak and inconsistent is a starting point, not a dead end. We clean the spark plugs on the bench. We clean the rotor. We clean the distributor cap. We reinstall everything, thread the plug wires back onto the tower, and we attempt to start. No start. And then something worse. We check for spark again and it is gone entirely. The engine is turning over on the starter, but we have lost ignition completely. We trace the problem and find it immediately. The distributor shaft is not turning. The engine is rotating, but the distributor is completely stationary, and a distributor that does not spin while the engine does is one of the worst things you can find on an engine that has been sitting this long. A non-rotating distributor on a running engine means something internal has failed. It could be the timing chain. If the timing chain has broken, the camshaft has stopped, and if the camshaft has stopped, the distributor drive gear on the camshaft has stopped with it. A broken timing chain also means no valve actuation, and that can mean bent valves, and bent valves mean a much deeper and more expensive conversation than we were hoping to have today. We pull the front clip to access the timing cover. We remove the crank pulley. We pull the timing cover. The timing chain is intact. That is a significant relief. But the distributor is still not turning, which means the problem is somewhere else. We study the relationship between the camshaft drive gear and the lower distributor shaft, and we find it. The camshaft gear teeth have worn to the point where they are no longer properly engaging the distributor drive. The camshaft is turning, but it is spinning past the distributor shaft rather than driving it. It is a mechanical engagement failure caused by decades of wear and, almost certainly, by decades of running without adequate lubrication. Which brings us to the oil. We drain the pan. What comes out is not oil in any meaningful current sense. It is a dark, thick, partially solidified material that contains sediment and clumps and debris that should not be inside any engine. We pull the pan entirely to get a proper look at the lower half of the engine, and what we find confirms what the oil was suggesting. The sludge buildup inside this pan is severe. The pickup tube screen is compromised. And when we examine the oil pump, which on this particular engine is mounted externally on the side of the block rather than submerged in the pan, we find broken gear teeth. The oil pump is dead. It has likely been dead for some time. And an engine running without adequate oil pressure is an engine that is slowly destroying itself from the inside, which explains the worn camshaft gear teeth, which explains the distributor engagement failure, which means we have found the root cause of the problem that brought this truck to its final stop sometime before 1959. We source a replacement oil pump. Used, correct application, matching gear configuration. We clean the pan thoroughly, using a small amount of gasoline to dissolve the remaining sludge before final rinse and reinstallation. We clean the pickup tube. We install the replacement pump, verifying gear mesh alignment against the camshaft carefully before torquing everything down. We reinstall the pan with a fresh gasket. We fill the engine with fresh F10W40 diesel oil, chosen for its detergent package and its film strength on older bearing surfaces. Shush. We turn the engine over by hand and watch the new pump gear engage the camshaft. Oil pressure builds immediately. We can see fresh oil moving up through the system and beginning to mist onto the timing chain from the gallery. Now we address the distributor timing. We bring the engine to top dead center by aligning the factory timing marks on the crank and cam gears, which are still clearly visible after all these years. With the engine on the correct stroke and the timing marks aligned, we lower the distributor into the block, indexing the rotor to the correct cylinder position. We snug the hold-down clamp and check that the shaft is driving freely. The distributor turns. We button up the timing cover and reinstall the crank pulley. We reconnect the ignition. We reinstall the spark plugs and wires. We attach a temporary fuel supply, a small external tank connected directly to the mechanical fuel pump inlet to bypass the truck's own fuel system entirely for this initial attempt. We spray a measured amount of carburetor cleaner into the intake manifold as a prime charge. We press the foot pedal starter, the engine cranks and stumbles and fires once, sharply, and dies. We prime again, we crank again, it fires twice, 3 times, catches briefly, dies. We adjust. We prime once more, a smaller amount this time, and press the pedal. The flathead 6 catches and runs. Not smoothly. Not quietly. Not with any of the authority it will eventually develop once it has been properly sorted out. But it runs. The engine runs. A 230 cubic inch flathead 6-cylinder that last turned under its own power sometime in the late 1950s is running in a yard in the present day, and the sound it makes is unlike anything a modern engine produces. It is mechanical in a way that has been engineered out of vehicles for 50 years. You can hear every part of the combustion cycle. You can hear the valves. You can hear the cam. You can hear the pistons. It is loud and agricultural and completely wonderful. Shh. We let it run and we listen to it and we check for immediate problems. Oil pressure is present on the gauge. Coolant temperature is climbing normally. No catastrophic knocking from the bottom end. No immediate fluid leaks beyond what you would expect from an engine that has just been disturbed for the first time in decades. We check the original mechanical fuel pump with the temporary external tank, and it works. The diaphragm is intact after 60 years. The pump draws fuel and delivers it with adequate pressure. It works. We move to the cooling system. The original belt is gone entirely, reduced to nothing over 6 decades. We locate a correct replacement and install it to drive the water pump and generator. We fill the radiator with plain water for this initial test, not wanting to waste coolant on a system we haven't yet proven is sealed. It is not sealed. A lower radiator hose fails almost immediately, weeping steadily at the connection point, the old rubber having hardened past the point of holding pressure. We drain the system, replace the hose, refill with fresh water, and restart. Shh. The engine idles for 20 minutes without overheating. The thermostat opens on schedule, water circulation is confirmed, the temperature stabilizes in the correct operating range, and the engine continues to run without complaint through the entire test period. We turn our attention to the tires. Most of them will not hold air. The rubber is 60 years old and the sidewalls are cracked and the beads are separated from the rim in places, and there is simply nothing to be done with them. We locate 4 replacement tires on the property. They are not new. They are not ideal, but they hold air and they hold it consistently, which makes them better than anything currently on the truck. We clean the cab enough to make it safe to occupy. We check the transmission for engagement in all 4 rig gears and in reverse. Everything functions. We strap the rear box doors closed and we drive the truck. It moves under its own power for the first time in over 60 years. The gearing is extremely low, which is correct for a working delivery truck of this era. These vehicles were not designed to cruise highways. They were designed to start and stop dozens of times a day in urban environments, carrying heavy loads, driven by people who needed reliability and torque at low speeds rather than top-end performance. The engine works hard at anything above 20 miles an hour, which is exactly how it was designed to work, and the whole drivetrain feels surprisingly solid given everything we have just been through to get here. We take the truck to a local waste facility to clean out the delivery box. Decades of accumulated debris, dirt, old organic material, scraps of things that were once recognizable and no longer are. The box floor is wood, as it was from the factory, and some of it is rotten and will need to be replaced. But the structural members are sound, and the walls of the box are straight, and the sheet metal throughout is remarkably solid. Shh. We take the truck to a car wash. We rinse 60 years of embedded grime from every panel, every crevice, every piece of chrome and glass and rubber. The patina that comes through once the surface dirt is gone is extraordinary. The original paint is oxidized and weathered into a complex surface that no paint shop could replicate intentionally. A record of everything this truck has been through written in color and texture across every panel. For the exterior finish treatment, we mix boiled linseed oil and mineral spirits in equal proportions and apply the mixture across the entire exterior using a spray gun. This is not paint. It is not a coating in the conventional sense. It is a penetrating treatment that soaks into the oxidized surface, feeding the metal, deepening the color of the existing patina, and leaving behind a soft satin sheen that makes the truck look exactly as it should. Not restored, not stripped and repainted, preserved, protected, honored. The result is something that a fresh paint job, however skillfully applied, simply cannot produce. It is a truck that looks like what it is. A machine that has been through 60 years and come out the other side still running, still solid, still recognizably itself. Shh. The sheet metal on this truck is exceptional. For a vehicle that sat outside through 6 decades of weather, the body panels are straight and the cab is tight and the box is structurally sound. The original flathead engine runs with the kind of steady, unhurried confidence that only comes from a power plant that was built with serious tolerances and serious intent. With a proper tune, with fresh points and correct timing and a rebuilt carburetor, this engine will run better than it sounds right now. And right now, it already sounds better than most things on the road. What we have at the end of this is a survivor. Not a restoration, not a recreation. A truck that was built in 1948, worked until 1959, sat for 60 years, and is now back on the road with its original engine, its original body, and its original character fully intact. The box floor needs new wood. The brakes need a full inspection and likely a rebuild. The electrical system needs proper cloth-wrapped wiring to replace the temporary direct runs we used to get it started. The carburetor needs a proper rebuild with a new kit rather than the cleaned-up original we are running now. The cooling system needs a full flush and a proper fill of correct coolant mixture. The transmission and rear axle fluids need to be changed with fresh oil. There is always more work. With a vehicle this age, there is always more work. But the hard work, the uncertain work, the work that requires you to look at a locked-up engine in a 60-year-old truck and decide whether you believe it can run again, that work is done, and it runs.